We had what I guess you would call a few years ago, we had a polyamorous case where they were swingers and the husband met a woman at a swinger party and fell in love, which is the number one rule against, like, you really are not supposed to fall in love with somebody at swingers. Like, that's like one of the rules. But anyway, and the the husband really wanted to be with this other woman, but was so into his own money, he didn't want to divorce the wife because he didn't want to give her part of his pension. So the husband went and found a man to move in and be with his wife while he basically lived with another woman.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers at the top of their game to help you navigate the various ins and outs of various legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Jonathan Breeden, who runs the eponymous law firm that bears his name just next to Raleigh, North Carolina, the Breeden Law Office. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
Doing great. I'm doing great, Justin. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Well, before we get started, as always, I'd like to jump over and take a look at your website. So this is his website. This is breedenfirm.com. That's BREEDENFIRM.com. We will have a link, as always, in the description down below to his firm, as well as their number, which is 919-661-4970. Again, link to that in the description down below. Breeden Law Firm is a full-service family law, domestic law, divorce, child custody law firm, and we're going to kind of dive into what he does. They do specialize in divorce, including complex high asset cases, child custody support, adoption, domestic violence matters, estate planning, guardianship, and related family law areas, offering, of course, compassionate advocacy and rigorous representation for their clients. And again, as always, you can visit them online at breedenfirm.com. Before we get started, as always, we are going to read from our sponsors. Our first sponsor today is Groove Funnels. Entrepreneurs and dream chasers, listen up. If you're running an online business, it doesn't have to mean drowning in subscriptions or wrestling with a messy tech stack. Groove.cm is rolling out a jaw-dropping limited time offer. You can basically run your entire operation for an entire year for the cost of 1 month of all of the other guys out there. This is a full service campaign creating thing. It creates funnels, it creates email campaigns, it creates e-commerce stores, affiliate programs, webinars, everything you could possibly want. If you were to add up what you would pay for all of the other things out there that do similar things like Go High Level or ClickFunnels, you would spend hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per month. But with Groove.cm, you can actually do the entire year. You can try it for 30 days for free, and if you like it, you can get the entire year for just $2.99. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove today to take advantage of this. Sign up for free, test it out, and if you like it, you get a full year for the cost of 1 month of the other guys. It really is an all-in-one platform, and again, if you can't make it profitable in a year, then don't worry about it. Our second sponsor is Habanero Social. What if Google could send you free clients every single month? With Habanero Social, it's not a fantasy, it's reality. Habanero Social is an AI-powered platform that optimizes your Google business profile to attract more local customers effortlessly. From cranking out high-quality content to managing reviews and fine-tuning your local SEO, Habanero Social handles it all, while you sit back and watch your business grow. 95% of searches stay on page 1 of Google. 85% of local searches stay in the Maps pack on page 1 of Google. That's the place you need to be if you want to capture those clients. An optimized Google business profile doesn't just show up. It engages. It builds trust, increases clicks, and ultimately boosts your business. And Habanero Social is so confident that what they do works that they guarantee a 3 times ROI. If you don't make at least 3 times more than you spend with them, they will refund your money or work for free. So stop chasing old school tactics. Visit habanerosocial.com to automate everything you need to rank higher, engage better, and drive more clients to your business. That's habanerosocial.com. Alrighty. So I am trying to kill my Zoom window here. Come on, Zoom. There we go. We're having a little bit of a lag on the Zoom window today for some reason. Well, again, I am joined by Jonathan Breeden, who runs the eponymous law firm over there that bears his name. Jonathan is the founder and principal attorney at Breeden Law Office. It was launched in late 2000 in the fast-growing suburbs of Raleigh following internships with North Carolina district attorneys. Inspired by the Federalist Papers during a ninth grade civics class, he fast tracked through North Carolina State for his political science degree and then pursued a hands on legal education at Campbell Law School, including a formative study abroad experience in London. Over 20 years, he has expanded to 4 offices serving Johnston, Harnett, and Wake counties in areas ranging from, again, divorce and child custody to estate planning and criminal defense. A consistent thread throughout his career is his commitment to nurturing child centered outcomes, whether reuniting families or securing children's welfare, with a compassionate yet again tenacious approach. Actively involved in local community, Jonathan has served on boards like the Johnston Community College and supports youth sports and special needs initiatives. Now, that was a mouthful, and I'm sure it barely even scratched the surface. So, my first question, Jonathan, to you is simply this: what did I miss?
I don't believe I'm as good as all the stuff you just said. Golly, that I don't think I've read. I don't think I've read my bio in a long time. I think it's a whole lot. It's been it's been an interesting journey over the last 25 years of practicing law, particularly over the last 5, where I scaled the firm from 3 employees to 23 employees, and
Wow.
that has been an adventure. The likes of which that I had no idea that I would ever go on. And we're very fortunate to have all the team members that we have now, and been able to grow the firm as much as we've grown the firm over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think that's important. And I think it goes. I know you're in the marketing business. I think it starts with marketing. You don't have phone calls, you don't have leads, you don't have cases. You know what I'm saying? But I do believe that there's got to be a system for how you're going to do it, system for how you're going to follow up with people, how you're going to intake people, how you're going to onboard people, how you're going to run those cases so that you can provide a consistent product over and over. Practicing law on scale is no different than McDonald's or Burger King or Papa John's. They have the way they do things so that get the same product from McDonald's, the same product from Domino's Pizza, same product from Papa John's Pizza. What we're trying to do here is, create systems and processes that allow us to provide a similar product among all the cases that we're providing. Now, every case is unique. Every case has its own facts, but we want to make sure that we are communicating with our clients, that we're being proactive in moving the cases, that everybody knows where we're going, everybody knows what a realistic outcome would be, that we continue moving towards that as quickly as possible.
That makes sense. So let me ask you this. Now, you kind of gave me a little bit of this right now, but I always like to let my guests have a chance to just pitch their firm. So if I didn't know anything about you, maybe we had a 30-second ride on the elevator or whatever. Give me the pitch for your firm. Why do people choose to work with you? Tell me who you really serve, the services you guys really excel at, what you're known for, and why people choose to work with you guys.
I think we're known for putting children first. That is why I started doing family law. That is why we continue to just pretty much do family law here at the Breeden Law Office, is that we wanted to be the voice for children, and we wanted to go out and try to make children's lives better. In every case, we try to start with maybe not as what's best for our client, because our client may be emotionally upset with the end of the relationship, but what is best for the child, and try to get the client to focus on what is best for the child, and then advocate for the client in the sense that we're trying to make the child have the best sense possible, have the best life possible, right? Children don't get to pick their parents. No child would pick for their parents to get divorced or separate. Um, but they still need the best that they can get from both parents, and they need to be involved in both parents need involved in their life as much as possible. Now, every situation is unique, but children should come first, and that is what we try to do here. We also are very proactive with the cases. We actually work the cases. We have enough staff and employees to actually pay attention to your case, move your case from start to finish, communicate proactively, respond to all communications within 24 hours. And most law firms are not set up to do that, because I really focus on how can I continue to mastermind the client experience. oftentimes, Justin, the outcome is predetermined largely before you got here. You know, do you drink too much? Do you have a drug problem? Did you cheat on your wife? Did you beat your wife? Does your job schedule require you to work second shift or third shift where you can't have the kids during the week? A lot of stuff is already determined before they get here. The facts are the facts. And so what we try to do is provide the highest level of customer service that we can and get the best outcome from the facts that we're given and be realistic about the facts that we're given. We're not going to change the facts. We're going to present the facts. And I think we have to have honest discussions with our clients about what is a likely outcome and why it would be better, cheaper, and less stressful to settle the case than to go have a trial.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. Um, So let me ask you this. What got you into law? Were you a young kid that was raised on, I don't know, Perry Mason or CSI, any of these law shows? Or did you I know you went and got a political science degree. Did you decide you didn't want to go into like city management and opted for law instead? And in full disclosure, I have a poli sci minor. I thought I wanted to major in poli sci for a long time, and then I shifted to the very lucrative degrees in philosophy and history instead. So I can ask the deep questions in life like paper or plastic, or you want fries with that. But what led you into law? And then what in particular led you into family law?
I think what led me to law, what you were saying when you were reading the bio earlier was when I got to, the first thing is have an overarching, it's innate sense of justice, right? It's very important to me that things be right and people not get cheated. Okay. As far back as I can remember, I've had this sort of sense of justice about me. And so I had that already, and I get to ninth grade, and in North Carolina, they required a civics class where you read the Federalist Papers, you read the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. And, I always kind of liked history and stuff like that. And it really was a fascinating thing. And I also had one of those great teachers. You know what I mean? We all have them in life. Guy named Spencer Willard. He died a couple of years ago, and he was just fantastic. He was an old school 1970s high school football coach, that farmed in the summers. You know what I mean? Just kind of a tough as nails kind of guy. And he really got the most out of us. And that's where I love, because basically the colonists, when they start to separate from the king, it was a sense of justice, right? They didn't feel like they were being treated correctly. And so they wanted to have their own government where they could govern themselves. And so that's kind of how it goes. We don't have time to go through all of history, but I would advise anybody listening, if you've not been to Williamsburg, Virginia, been to Colonial Williamsburg, where they have the reenactors and all the original buildings that they've rebuilt and redone there. I would highly recommend it if you like history, if you want to learn what was going on. These reenactors are awesome. They talk to you as if it is 1775, and it's not very expensive. And you will find it fascinating what they were thinking. And the problems and worries that they had then are not that much different than the problems and worries we have now.
No, that makes sense. I lived in Northern Virginia for a couple of years, and I loved the whole area down there. It's absolutely gorgeous. And getting to experience some of that, as far as America goes, ancient civilization of our founding fathers. There's, the further out west you get, the newer everything is, it really is. It's fascinating to be out there. So, okay, so let me ask you this. Well, actually, here's a random question out of left field, just because I'm kind of curious. You run a firm, you're in North Carolina, you've got 4 locations at this point. You've been practicing for over 20 years. So you were practicing during the dark times, which we call the COVID pandemic, right? I'm really curious, how did the pandemic affect you and your firm, the way that you interface with your clients? And did you notice a spike in divorces? Did you notice a spike in babies? I see different people have different experiences, and I don't know that I've talked to anyone from North Carolina about that particular issue. So I'm kind of curious your take on that.
My business had started to really grow in the back half of 2019. I hired the first associate attorney that I had that actually had experience and could carry an independent caseload. Prior to that, all the associates I had from 2009 to 2015, the brand new attorneys didn't know what they were doing and were trying to learn, and they were not carrying an independent caseload. But in the back half of 2019, I hired an attorney who was a very good attorney And her and I were able to double the business overnight because we could do that many more consults and represent that many more people because I had that many leads that I just couldn't get to. Um, but when COVID happened, the courthouses closed. But fortunately or unfortunately, domestic violence continued. So, what kept me afloat other than the PPP loans were domestic violence protective orders and emergency custody orders where people were sharing the kid, and then they're like, "Oh, the courthouse is closed. You're not going to see your kid until the judge tells me." So we were able to get a few of those, to help us keep going. But the business really took a shot. I did as much in the first 3 months of 2020 as I did in the last 8 or 9. The associate attorney in June of 2020 decided that she was going to stick to Raleigh and take a job back there. So I was kind of starting over with the staff. I had 3 staff members, and I lost all 3 of them in June of 2020. One was
Oh,
moved
wow.
over with her boyfriend and decided she didn't want to be with anymore and went back to California. One was a single mom, and the schools were courts are reopening and the schools were not. So she needed to find a more remote position. We needed to be back in person because we started to go back to court here in North Carolina in June and July of 2020. And I lost my associate. So I had to sort of start to rebuild this firm from the ground up with all new employees in the back half of 2020. And we did so successfully. The business really did take off in 2021 once we were able to get a couple of attorneys in here. We had some young attorneys. We started training them. The courts were back open. The one thing I did not do, I would tell anybody listening, do not back off your marketing. I did not drop one dime in marketing spend because I didn't want to lose any of the positioning that I had. I had fairly dominating map positions in most of my locations, at least within the immediate vicinity. And even though I wasn't making much money, I kept advertising at the same level so that I wouldn't lose my positioning, so that when it did come back, I would be in a position to grow, and grow I did in 2020.
Awesome. That makes a lot of sense. And I mean, it's great. It's a great idea. It's great philosophy. Don't stop marketing. As long as your marketing is paying off, you should always be able to spend $1 and make 10 back, or whatever it happens to be. Then it's a winning solution. Did you notice a bump in divorces, or did it seem like it mostly stayed the same?
And I don't know because I know my office grew, but I also had more staff and better marketing and better systems. So I don't know if they did. I know my business grew substantially. That partly because there was more work to be divided up, probably, but I can't say absolutely for sure. I just did a better job with the leads I had.
Gotcha. Oh, that makes perfect sense. Maybe putting the cart before the horse, or the horse before the cart. Sometimes you just can't know in that moment. Um, and I haven't looked at all the data. I mean, I've seen people pull out different bits of data in different places, and it's kind of fascinating to see everyone's different experience of it. And also, I noticed some people it really opened them up. They maybe had one location, but then with COVID, all of a sudden everyone was Zooming. That's actually why we rebooted the podcast. Was COVID? All of a sudden, attorneys knew how to Zoom, and so we rebooted the podcast. And so I've had a couple of guys. I had a family law guy out in California. He's like, I'm only working in Northern California, but now I work everywhere because I can work everywhere. They have Zoom hearings and depositions, and 99% of what he needs to do is all virtual anymore, which is kind of fascinating to see how the industry has kind of shifted that way. Do you guys do a lot of in-person stuff? I trust still, or do you have clients that meet you purely online?
Here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, it's almost all in person now. They still do some hearings in Raleigh via WebEx. They don't do any virtual hearing in the suburbs of our other suburban counties around Raleigh. And Raleigh is now down to doing very, very few WebEx hearings. So everything now with the state courts in North Carolina is overwhelmingly in person. I know the bankruptcy courts are now all virtual. I know some other states are still largely virtual. North Carolina is almost all in person as far as hearings and stuff. So that part has not changed since COVID. We did have a lull where we did some WebEx, but that's largely gone away now.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So let me ask you this. You've been practicing for 20 years, and I'm a firm believer that if you go up to bat enough, you're not going to bat 1,000. Nobody does, right? And so I'm sure, Jonathan, in your legal career, you've had some setbacks, maybe even things you would consider a failure. But I'm a firm believer that, as long as you learn from it, it's really a slow burn win more than it is a failure. So can you let my listeners know about maybe one time in your practice law, maybe early on, maybe recently, whatever it happens to be, where you experienced what you would consider to be a failure, but what did you learn from it? And how do you carry that forward to make sure you're always giving the best care to your clients?
Well, I mean, when you're having this kind of growth, there's going to be some turnover among your staff. We weren't, maybe we didn't always hire people that were completely aligned with our values and our vision, but we were a little confused as what our values and our visions were. Without having that laid out there, it's hard to hire people that were aligned with your values and vision. And so I did in July of 2022, had the day my fourth associate started, the other three quit.
Oh, wow.
Um, and two of them to go compete to close up shop, take what they thought was going to be 50% of my business with them and compete against me, uh, in the same markets.
Oh, wow.
And one decided to get married and move to Miami, Florida. And so I was left with an older attorney, but he had never practiced family law. So he basically was a new family law attorney. Myself, with all of these cases, had three of my attorneys leave at one time. And you a little bit. But you have to keep moving forward, right? Like I could have at that point decided, you know what, I'm going to scale this thing back. I'm going to keep it small and keep it all. I'm going to continue doing the cases. Had a staff of 5 or 6, and probably made a decent living for my family here in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina. But I had a better vision. I had a bigger vision because I felt like I was doing things the right way. And the level of service that we were able to provide was far superior to the level of service I was seeing from my competitors. And I felt like I had a duty to the citizens of this community to practice law the right way and to grow this thing again. And so I had to look inward, right? I had to say, like, I have anxiety issues. I had to look at that and say, I got to work on that. I got myself back into counseling. I started, listening to some of the advice I was getting. I hired a business coach in 2020, a guy named Richard James, your practice mastered. He's been a tremendous help to me, him and his team. I wasn't always listening to what they were saying. I was going and, I was kind of, oh, I know better, but they were right. I started poured myself into their teachings and reading what they told me to read and started working on myself. I developed vision. I developed vision and vision statements for the firm. I started redefining who I needed to employ to be able to gain those visions and with my values and the values of the firm, where we want to be dynamic and we want to be empathetic and we want to, we want to be the place that families can turn in North Carolina for a home free of violence where children can be successful. And so, I had to do all that. I didn't have all that stuff in 22, right? But that was sort of the moment when it was like, okay, this is not working. The people that left weren't the right people for me, and they should not have been here to start. Okay. But, hire who you hire, you're desperate, you got work, you're dealing with turnover. But at that moment, I made a decision that I had to be better, to be a better leader. That I was going to get people to follow me, and we were going to be able to grow this to where it is today.
Awesome. No, that makes sense, and that's it's quite the journey. And now you went again. You went from 3 to 23. So clearly, things are going in the right direction. Things are trending well for you at this point, and hopefully you're not visited by the same ratio of people suddenly leaving leaving your firm, because that would be a statistical improbability.
I'm not going to say people don't leave, right? But because we mainly hire young attorneys straight out of law school or in their first 2 or 3 years of practice to work here. And we do lose attorneys because they don't want to do. They think they want to do family law, but they don't really want to do family law. Family law is
Yeah.
emotionally taxing. The class can be abusive. The other attorneys can be abusive. You know what I'm saying? I'm just being honest. Like the attorneys other attorneys sometimes are worse than the clients. I'm be real. I don't know what it's about family law attorneys, but some of them are really tough to deal with. And they're tough individuals. But I mean, I do think, um, but but you can get to a size, Justin, where if you're doing it right, the loss of any one individual is not catastrophic.
Yeah.
When you have two and you lose one, that's like losing an arm. Well, if you now I have 8 attorneys, but I had 10. And then I had to fire one because they just couldn't pick up what we needed to do. They didn't have trial ad skills. I didn't have time to teach them. But that's okay. A good person who did a nice job, but we needed a different skill set. And then their replacement, 4 days after we let them go, quits with no notice. That's difficult, right? All of a sudden you're down 2 lawyers. But when you could spread 2 lawyers to work over 7 others, while that's still a lot, it's not nearly as bad as trying to spread 2 or 3 lawyers over 2 people, right? And but the one thing I would tell anybody, if you're interested in scaling and you're interested in building, a multi-million-dollar law firm like mine, you've always got to be hiring and you have to have systems in place for everything you do. We have scripts for how we answer the phone. Our phones are only answered in El Salvador. We have 4 employees down there. And you should definitely look into nearshoring or offshoring employees. I have 2 employees in the Philippines who are able to help me. I have 2 virtual assistants there. I got 4 phone reps in El Salvador. They do a great job for us, making outbound calls, scheduling appointments, building relationships with people, getting back to people. That's all important. Building relationships, right? All of this is about building relationships, but you have to be able to do things the same way over and over. You have to answer the phone the same way. You have to do your consults the same way. You have to do your fee agreements the same way. Like there has to be a system for what you're doing if you're going to scale and continue to be successful.
No, absolutely. There was a great book I read 20 some odd years ago, and it really shaped the way I view business as well. It was by a guy named George Ritzer. It's called The McDonaldization of Society. And he basically talked about how McDonald's came about, and everyone knows the story more or less. Ray Kroc sees the two McDonald's brothers, and they've got this system in place that very quickly churns out a burger and fries and a drink really, really quickly. And because they're able to predictably do everything at McDonald's is so to the T that every burger is 27% fat, like exactly because they need every burger to cook up uniformly and everything else. And the same principles apply to basically everything else that we do. I found it a fascinating read. I recommend it to I'll put a link down below if you guys want to pick it up. It's called The McDonaldization of Society by Ritzer, Ritzer. He did a couple others as well that I was really fascinated by. I don't usually go in for sociology stuff very often, but his was it was an interesting read, and it very much strikes me as the same concept. And yeah, predictable, scalable, quantifiable, making sure that you're getting, always the same quality of care and service for each of your clients. For me, as somebody that does marketing, for a living, I've found that to be very, very important as well. So making sure I can give the proper, scalable, predictable, quantifiable, measurable results to my clients as well. So I think that's absolutely fascinating. So the flip side of a big failure, though, obviously, is a success. I am sure that you've had some amazing wins in your career, Jonathan. Moments that you're, particularly proud of. Maybe those moments you're like, "Hey, this is why I got into law," right? Or that really confirms you're doing the right thing and you're happy with where you are. What's one or two of the biggest successes in your legal career that you're most proud of?
As far as, I mean, I'm I'm most proud of the number of people that we're able to serve now because I've been able to develop these processes and systems that allows my way of practicing law, my client-centered approach to the practice of law to be experienced by more and more clients every week and every year. From actual cases, I go back to the ones, I always go back in my mind to the ones where I'm helping fathers, sometimes for free, get to see children and be in their children's lives when they're being denied access to their children. Those are the ones that always stick with me. You know what I mean? I did one for free about, I had it for like 5 or 6 years. The case went on and on and on forever, where I had a father who was in prison when the child was born for selling drugs. But he came out and he was never a user. He just on drugs. And he came out and he got a job, and he's working in Birmingham, Alabama at the airport, and he's cleaning planes, and he's cleaning the airport, and he's working third shift, and he's clean, and he's doing the right thing. I got a call from a father's rights group out of Atlanta. They said, look, we got this guy, and he's got this case in Raleigh. He really needs help, and he doesn't have any money. Would you be willing to help him? And I agreed to help him. And boy, did I have any idea where that was going to go. But we have ultimately got that father full custody of his son.
Wow.
His son is thriving now. He's in high school. He's on the football team, and he's been living with his father for the last 4 or 5 years. And when I got that case, he couldn't see his child at all, and there was no reason. That father had a court order, and the mother just wouldn't follow it, figuring father was too poor to do anything about it. And eventually that mom did go to jail. She did lose custody. She sued me in federal court because for kidnapping me, the judge, the sheriff. So it was an interesting adventure. But I always go back to I always just go back to the ones where we've helped fathers. I got an email from a stepmom the other day, another case that we did a few years ago. Again, another pro bono one. Those are the ones that come back to you. Yeah, we got to get paid for the ones, but some of the ones you do for free are the ones that are the most needed. Where the young man was a cook at a local sports bar and had a child with a woman. They were never married, and the child's mother was jealous that the father had moved on to another relationship, was denying access to the child. There was nothing wrong with the father. There was nothing wrong with the father's family. He just didn't like the fact that he had moved on. And he was in a different relationship. And we had to file that action. We got an order. She wouldn't follow it. We had to bring her to court. The judge had to tell her if she didn't follow the order, she's going to put her in jail and all of that. I mean, it was one of those cases. Anybody listening to some family law will know what I'm talking about. But they wrote to me for the first time in 2 years last week, Justin. And they talked about how they now all get along, how he is still in the child's life, how the child is excelling in school, how the dad's helping with the little sports teams. And that wouldn't have happened if we don't get involved in that case. That mom's going to deny that father access to that child forever because she's mad that she got broken up with, and that would have been not fair, right? Children only get two parents, right? And they're always going to be complaining about the other parent, even if they don't have a relationship with the other parent, because they're half the other parent.
Gotcha. Gotcha. This might be related to what you just said because you being sued in federal court for kidnapping is kind of absurd. But what would you say is one of the most absurd things you've encountered in your practice of law outside of that particular scenario? Would it be, something that happened? It could be in a hearing or deposition, something that happened. It could be an expectation that client came in or that the opposing party came in with, or, just the way something resolved. But what's one of the most absurd things you've encountered in your practice of law, Jonathan?
The swingers cases are always the most interesting, Justin. I mean, they just are. You know what I mean? I don't know. I've never watched that TV show, Sister Wives or whatever. But I did have one of those cases where you did have one one man, one wife, and one girlfriend all living together. And it did not work out. And then the wife left and accused the husband's girlfriend of being demon possessed and needing to have the demons cast out of her. And that was an interesting case. We had what I guess you would call, a few years ago, we had a polyamorous case where they were swingers and the husband met a woman at a swinger party and fell in love, which is the number one rule against, like, you really are not supposed to fall in love with somebody as swingers. Like, that's like one of the rules. But anyway, and the the husband really wanted to be with this other woman, but was so into his own money, he didn't want to divorce the wife because he didn't want to give her part of his pension. So the husband went and found a man to move in and be with his wife while he basically lived with another woman. And sometimes the man would be there and, they were all together, the three of them. But ultimately, the husband really wanted to be with this other lady he met at a swingers party. And eventually, the guy that he had moved in to sort of entertain his wife moved on. and we ended up doing the divorce. It ended up costing him even more money because his pension had grown that much more, and they've been married that much longer. He would have been better off to divorce her 3 years earlier versus creating this whatever polyamorous relationship that they were having. So, but yeah, Justin, you never get bored with the swinger thing. It's I find them absolutely fascinating. I have no problems with people that are swingers or any of that, as long as everybody is a consenting adult. I really don't. I don't. I'm not passing judgment on people, but it does make you an interesting party guest.
I can imagine. Now, would you say that those cases have increased over the years? I feel like even 20 years ago, 10 years ago, those probably would have been less common than they are now, but maybe I'm just naive.
No, they're more common now because it's easier to meet up, right? There's hundreds and thousands of swinger websites. There's so many different ways to communicate, meet up, market yourself in that world if that's what you want to do. That I think that there is a lot more of it because it's easier to find partners.
Gotcha. That makes sense. What do you think is the biggest change that you've seen in the last 20 years when it comes to the family law space? Is it, the rise of social media? Is it, particular technologies, cameras everywhere being ubiquitous? Is it social media? Is it, is it swingers websites, right? What are the biggest things you've seen in the legal space that have really changed? And where do you think it's going to go in the next, I don't know, 15, 20 years?
I think everything you just said, Justin, is a substantial change since I started practicing law in 2000, for sure. To me, the biggest and best thing that's happened is the rise of fathers' rights and the recognition that children need their fathers as much as they need their mothers and joint custody arrangements. When I started practicing law, fathers had almost no chance at a joint custody situation unless the mother was just horrible. Now, we see a lot of joint custody situations, 50-50, 60-40, where both parents, particularly fathers now, get a much better chance to parent their child, to be more active in their child's life, and to truly be a co-parent and not some sort of Disney dad. And that has been a great positive thing. All the research on children is that they need parents and they need their fathers as much as possible. And I don't believe that that was the belief when I started. Most fathers just got every other weekend and 2 weeks into summer.
Gotcha. That's fascinating. No, that would make sense. Um,
As far as where it's going, I know it's the second part of your question.
yeah.
I do think AI is going to play a huge role in a lot of areas of law, estate planning and stuff like that, even in personal injury. And it will have some effect on family law, and it will not replace family lawyers because family lawyers are advocates who go to court and they're on their feet advocating for their clients. And AI cannot do that. So when I speak to young attorneys, which I do all the time, I encourage them to consider family law despite all the emotions and everything that's involved, because they're not going to be replaced if you're an advocate.
Yeah. No,
A
that makes sense.
computer cannot go to court and advocate for you.
Was it last year already? It might even be a year and a half ago that Chat GPT passed the bar. It's like 4.0. They're on 5 now or whatever it is. But it passed the bar with like a 90 some odd percent success rate in passing the bar. But of course, that's minimum competency, right? So, I mean, obviously it can pass it, but still, there's a big difference between answering some questions correctly based on case law and really understanding in the moment where things are. I mean, obviously, and I'm in the digital space. I do a lot of work with AI in what I do, because it's like having an assistant, right? But it makes things a lot easier. But I mean, they're under the assumption at this point that in the next year, by the end of next year, and really it's probably by the end of this year, 2025, 90% of the content online will be AI generated. Like, I mean, everything is shifting. Like, it's going to be just this huge revolution. Again, some of our sponsors, Hop on Your Social, they use AI to help run people's Google business profiles based on automation. And I'm really curious to see just how, like, what are we going to look at when we think, in 10 years? When we look back on this AI revolution, is this going to be as big or bigger than the internet? Is this going to be bigger than the internet? Is this going to be actually a kind of a dud because it never quite gets to where everyone thought it was going to be? Like they're expecting, it was an AGI, right? Artificial General Intelligence. They're hoping that it comes in the next year or two or three. Other people are very dubious that we're ever actually going to get there. So it is a fascinating area, and I'm just kind of talking because I find this an area that's fascinating to talk about. But yeah, I guess I'd be curious to see how do you incorporate AI in what you do already in any way for your clients?
I mean, we do some. It's when it comes to the drafting and stuff like that. We do use AI a little bit there. But I think the biggest thing, lawyers, if lawyers are listening to this, I think non-attorney ownership over the next 10 years will be an awful. You'll start to see Costco and Walmart and maybe CVS and Walgreens get into the law business. I mean, you think about Costco and Walmart are already into eye exams and, you know, uh, all kinds of stuff. Banking. Walmart has a
Pharmacies,
bank, right?
banking, yeah.
Pharmacies, right? Like, so I think that we will see non-attorney ownership and private equity come into law firms, and they're gonna do things a different way. They're gonna do their business way, and they're gonna demand these law firms that they own and build provide the customer service that you expect from Amazon and the other major companies. I think Amazon may get in. I really think we already have non-attorney ownership in Arizona, have a quasi type thing in Washington State. I think they're working on something in Utah. But I do think we're going to see that. And I also think we're going to see the rise of the paraprofessional, where you're going to see paralegals be authorized by states to do certain things that only lawyers can do now. They already have that in Utah. They already have it in Washington State. And I think we're going to see that almost like PAs to doctors. I think we're going to see that with the paralegals spread across all 50 states. So to me, the AI, yes. But as far as day to day of like business of law, I think non-attorney ownership of law firms and paraprofessionals that have the right to practice some types of law is what we're going to also see in the next 10 years.
That's fascinating. I'm kind of amazed that we haven't seen a Walmart attorney yet. Like, I feel like it wouldn't be that hard if they can do pharmaceuticals. I assume they could do law already, but I do think that especially with the rise of AI, which, if nothing else, allows you to systematize a lot of the day-to-day processes, probably makes it easier to scale something like that. So it is fascinating to think that we might be seeing the rise of the Mick lawyer, if I can call it that, right? Something along those lines. But I imagine they'll never get the same quality and care that you get from a Walmart attorney that you'd get from someone like yourself, as a sole, not sole practitioner, but someone who runs the thing with their heart and their soul, as opposed to somebody that's just punching the time card, so to speak. Um, so here's a really important question, crucially important question. Who's your favorite pop culture attorney?
I don't really watch those shows. Like doctors don't like watch the medical shows. So I can't really, I can't really say who my favorite pop culture attorney is. I can't really know. I had a lot of respect for Johnny Cochran, who was a real attorney, um, and he passed away. And I was fascinated by the O.J. Simpson trial. I was in college at NC State, and I thought he did a really good job with that case. OJ probably was guilty, uh, given all the facts and everything. But you know what? Like he was able to go in there and pick apart holes in the prosecution's case, and to my mind, you know, if you're going to take somebody's rights away, you better be able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And if
Yeah.
you can't, then they get to keep their rights. So I mean, OJ ultimately went to prison for armed robbery before he passed away. But anyway, on a different case, trying to get some of the memorabilia back in Nevada, I think. So yeah, I mean, I can't really say pop culture. I like the movie Attic. I like Atticus Finch.
Mhm.
I thought that was a good book and movie, but
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Do you I know Johnny Cochran was famous for that rhyme, right? If the glove don't fit, you must acquit, or however he
Right.
phrased it.
That's
Very similar to
exactly
that.
right.
Do you ever rhyme in any of your legal work?
I mean, sometimes you do. I mean, anything you can do to try to make the judge pay attention, right? Like these judges are hearing a lot of cases in family court. If you can do something to make them, they got other stuff going on. You're the fifth 1 hour hearing of the day. They got kids and families and clerks and employees, and you got to do something to try to make it stand out. I've done stuff like that. I've fussed and yelled and talked about the flag and yeah, some of that kind of stuff just to get them to pay attention. They listen to what I'm trying to say. So I've done some of that.
Gotcha. Here's a weird question. I've never asked this to someone before, but I'm curious what you're going to say. I always test out new questions. What do you think is one of the best compliments a client's ever given you?
I think the best compliments are are I mean, thank you. And I'm gonna be honest, like the ones that truly appreciate what you've done that allowed them to be a parent to their child. And if you weren't there advocating for them, they were not going to get that opportunity. And the one good thing about being at the same intersection in the suburbs of Raleigh, North Carolina for 25 years is you get to see these kids grow up and you get to see their kids. And their kids play with your kids. And like I mean, you get to see these things, you get to see positive outcomes. We get kids out of bad situations every day, Justin. I mean, out of abusive situations that your audience probably can't even imagine unless they're family lawyers or they do criminal defense. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of bad stuff in this world, and kids are caught in the middle. And so, when you can get a child out of a bad situation into a good situation, and they grow up to be successful, or growing up to be successful, you get to see them, and you get to see the stories, read about them in the papers, and all of that stuff. That's the greatest compliment right there. Is thank you for allowing me to be a parent to my child.
No, that's huge. And again, you're every day you're making a difference in people's lives, and I think that that's absolutely awesome. If you were to step away from law tomorrow, there's one more new question I'm just kind of playing with. If you were to step away from law tomorrow, what do you think you would do?
I would be a motivational speaker. I
Very
mean, I
cool.
already do some of this now, but I would go around and talk to people about improving their mindset, overcoming anxiety, making decision, being 1% better today than you were yesterday,
Yeah.
and not quitting, not quitting on your goals, not quitting on yourself, not quitting on your family, because you've not lost if you don't quit. So I would go around and I would talk to people. That's part of the reason why I like going on podcasts. I go on a lot of mindset podcasts, I go on some law podcasts, but I go on a lot more mindset podcasts. And I get in to talk about some of the mindset shifts I talked about earlier that allowed me to take this firm from where it was to where it's going, and how anybody can do it. And the mind's a very powerful thing. You were talking about books earlier. First book I read when I joined this business group, Richard James and Your Practice Master, was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It was written in the 1920s, 1930s, and he interviewed all the great minds of the time: Henry Ford, J.P. Morgan, Rockefellers, and he just talked about what he found. And basically, he concludes, and it's a great book, is that if you can think about it, you can bring about it. And what you think about, you bring about, and anything you put your mind to, you can achieve. The mind's a very powerful thing, but you got to put your mind to it, and you got to keep moving towards the goal, and not let anybody tell you you're not going to get.
That makes sense. That's a good
You
book.
start
I
to get out
read.
of line, and as soon as you start to get out of line, Justin, everybody around you is going to tell you you're not going to get there.
Yeah. This is true. This is true. That's the uphill battle that all entrepreneurs have to face. I think you can actually find the entire book at this point. It's in the public domain now, if I'm not mistaken. So you can find it online for free, or even people reading through it on YouTube or whatnot. So if you guys are looking for something good to listen to, it's motivational. Go listen to that. It's a wonderful book by Napoleon Hill. I'm a fan of that one as well. I'm going to ask you one more serious question, and then we'll kind of wrap things up because I've already taken up a lot of your time today. Jonathan was very kind enough. He wasn't aware that this was the actual podcast. We thought we were going to do a little pre-roll, and we did a little pre-roll, but I want to be respectful of his time. But one of the things we did talk about in the pre-roll, and I'm going to be careful with how I bring this up. There's certain words that are triggering on YouTube and other podcasts for Positive Ways, and obviously we don't want to give away any information for um, that would be pointing to any particular clients, present, past, future, whatever it happens to be. But I know that in the family law space, as well as in criminal defense, you deal with some of the roughest moments in human history. You deal with things like child abuse. You deal with, lives being torn apart. You deal with potential, self-harm, including permanent self-harm and even self-harm of others in the family. How how do you compartmentalize that aspect of what you do and not let it affect you, or does it always affect you?
It's going to affect you as a human being, no matter how long you do it. You have to learn to accept it, and you have to learn to know that you did not cause it, right? When I first started, the first time I had a client commit suicide, I kind of blamed myself, even though I had nothing to do with the fact that they had committed suicide. And so you have to grow, learn, adjust, mature, and realize that you did what you could do. That some people have mental illness and sickness that you can't control, and they're going to do what they're going to do. And you didn't cause it, and you couldn't stop them. And it is what it is. And most of the bad stuff you find out after it already happened. There's nothing you can do about it anyway. So you have to try to move forward. You can grieve the loss of your client. You can grieve the loss of their children. We've had children lost. We've had clients lost. Um, but you have to continue to move on because you can't live in the past. You got to live in the future. Everybody out there, don't be making excuses about where you are and it's because of your mama or your daddy or whatever. No, like you're responsible for where you are right now. You're responsible for where you're going. So if you don't like where you are, you need to be better. And if you're being put down and you're dealing with depression or stuff like that from stuff that's happened in your past, you got to deal with it because nothing in that past is going to do anything to help you with your future.
Absolutely. That's just good advice in general too. I mean, that's good life advice. Well, Jonathan, again, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I want to be respectful of your time. So here in a minute, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you my three closing questions. I'll give those to you in advance so you can percolate on them. Question number one is, if I gave you a magic wand, you could change one thing about your firm. What would you change and why? Number two is, if we can go back in time, meet young Jonathan, you could give him, maybe one piece of advice without breaking the space-time continuum. What advice would you give to young Jonathan and why? And number three is, if I gave you my magical pencil, and with this pencil you could erase a law that's on the books, edit a law that's on the books, or add a new law to the books, what law would you delete, edit, or add? While you're percolating on that, we're going to jump over really quickly and take again a look at your website. I am talking with Jonathan Breeden, who runs again the eponymous law firm that bears his name with 4 locations throughout the North Carolina area. That is breedenfirm.com. If you need a family attorney, if you have a divorce issue, child custody, child support, domestic violence, legal guardianship, adoption, wills and estate planning, or other family law issues, you can definitely reach out to him. He also runs a podcast called The Best of Johnson County, which you can listen to online. He just talks to people that are in the area and kind of stays on top of everything else. He's got great reviews and everything else, and I think he would be a wonderful resource for you. So again, if you are interested in speaking with Jonathan or anyone at his firm, please visit. We'll have, as always, a link in the description down below, as well as his phone number. Our final sponsor for today is Rank with News. Is not being in the news regularly costing your firm or your company credibility and visibility? Do you feel that getting found in Google is more about dumb luck than science? What if there was a guaranteed way to get your law firm or your business featured in major national publications like Yahoo News and Bloomberg, Reuters, Business Insider, AP News, and others, and seeing those articles ranking locally, nationally, right on page 1 of Google, sometimes in under 8 hours for major competitive keywords? Well, What else would you need to know? Rank with News is simply the most powerful way to hit page one in under 2 weeks safely, organically, and usually permanently. It's like guaranteed SEO on steroids, ranking quickly and sticking long term. If you're tired of poor visibility for your business or firm, visit rankwithnews.com to learn more and book a time to speak with a specialist about featuring your firm or business in major national 8-figure traffic sites that can launch you to page one in a matter of hours and help you dominate your local marketplace. Get media exposure, rank higher in Google, build credibility, and win more customers and clients with rankwithnews.com. All right, so Jonathan, I have a magic wand and I give you my magic wand. And with this wand, you can make one change to your firm. What change would you make if you could change anything and know that it would work out perfectly well?
I would love to be able to attract another mid-career professional to help supervise the young attorneys in this office. We've been looking to try to hire one for the last 12 months, and we've been unable to find someone that would fit the bill. But it would be great to be able to find a mid-career professional to be able to come here and help supervise the younger attorneys, so that we can hire more young attorneys to help more people.
Well, if you're out there and you're looking for a change in scenery, maybe you want to move to the North Carolina area and you're interested in position, it sounds like Jonathan's got at least one open right now. So there you go. Question number two. We go back in time, maybe 20 years. We meet young Jonathan, or maybe even all the way back to, was it ninth grade? But you're able to give yourself one piece of advice other than the obvious: buy a lot of Bitcoin and hold it till 100K or whatever, right? What advice would you give yourself and why?
I would tell myself that, you know, it's not, life's not easy. The road's not easy. Entrepreneurship is for sure not easy. Um, but that if you just keep going, um, your dreams can become a reality, and your dreams may change, right? Like I would have never thought, even in 2019, that I would have 23 employees and have 4 locations and be looking at a fifth location. And we just hired another attorney today, and we'll probably hire another attorney Friday. Like I didn't get that far in the dream, right? If I could build a 7-figure firm, like that was the dream. And so, what I would say is, don't quit, right? Get a coach, you know, get a coach. Everybody needs a coach. Serena Williams has a coach. Tiger Woods has a coach. All the golfers, like all these athletes have coaches. Players need coaches too. Get a coach like Richard James. There's tons of coaches out there, and not quit. And I got there, and it wasn't always pretty. Wasn't always a straight line, but we're here now, and I wouldn't change anything for the world.
That's good advice. I think everyone could benefit from that. Having an accountability partner of some kind, especially someone with experience. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right? Well, if one of those people is a coach that's been there and done that, then you're always going to have somebody pulling you in that direction, which I think is important. Okay, so question number three. I have a magical Bic pencil here. This pencil, I noticed, can erase laws, edit laws, and add laws. And if I were to give you this pencil, now there's only enough lead in here for one change, and only enough eraser for one law. What law would you delete or add or edit? And it could be, again, a major law with sweeping national ramifications. It can be a local law that affects, married couples or divorcing couples in North Carolina. It could even just be getting rid of parking tickets, or income tax. What one change would you make if you had this pencil for just a few minutes?
That's funny. I think I'm going to go with, in North Carolina. You're going to laugh because this is not a big thing. It's only in North Carolina. But in North Carolina, hospitals and medical providers can only expand if they get permission from the state, permission of the state. And if I could change one law in North Carolina, I would get rid of this, what's called a certificate of need, and I would allow all the healthcare providers and all the hospitals to build as many hospital beds and as many MRI machines and as many doctors' clinics as they want, to compete in the free market, because I think that would drive down healthcare costs, and I think it would raise the availability of healthcare in the state. So I really see that the lack of healthcare and the cost of healthcare affects people, and I think that would be one law if I could change it. that would make healthcare better for the citizens of North Carolina.
That's fascinating because that's definitely like not in your wheelhouse, but it's a neat
Correct.
concept. So I
Correct.
like that. That most people play it safe with something simple in their wheelhouse, but I like it when someone goes out on a limb there. So that's really cool. Thank you for that. Well, Jonathan, I do like to let my guest have a final word. Are there any parting words of wisdom? You've already given some, obviously, to our listeners. But any last thoughts or anything you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I mean, I would just say, like, you can reach out to me if you have any questions about what I've said or heard. He's talked about breedenfarm.com. It's being reworked right now. There should be a new website up in the next couple of months. You reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn at Jonathan Breeden. I'm on Twitter, X at Breeden Law NC. We're on Instagram at Breeden Law Office, on TikTok at Breeden Law Office. And we're also the Best of Johnson County podcast. You can be reached out there. It's on all the social media channels, Facebook as well, YouTube, Breeden Law Office, or Best of Johnson County podcast. Be glad to answer any questions about what we've done. But the one thing I would say is, if you're an attorney out there and you're listening to this podcast, you really should think about the client experience that you're providing to your client. I don't care if you're representing a corporation, an individual, whatever, but what kind of customer service are you providing? And you have to understand, you're all being compared to Amazon, who can now deliver ice cream to my front steps. That's what we're being compared to. It's all the same. The consumer doesn't know the difference between law and accounting and Amazon and Walmart. They expect the same thing from you that they expect from some of the greatest customer service automation systems there are in the world. And how are you going to meet that expectation to provide a greater service to your client? And you should be asking yourself that question every day. And if you've not walked in the front door of your office in a long time, walk in the front door and see what you see.
That's good advice. I like that. I like that a lot. So there you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Attorney Post. As always, I have been talking family law, etc., with Jonathan Breeden, who again runs a law firm that bears his name. As always, though we do deal with a host of legal issues on this podcast does not constitute legal advice. And should you have a legal issue, you should always seek advice from a competent attorney in your area who focuses on the matter that you need help with. Now, obviously, if you're in North Carolina and you have a family law issue in particular, I think Jonathan and his law firm would be a wonderful resource for you. So again, as always, we will have links down below to his information. You can check him out, check out his podcast, check out his YouTube, check out all the different things he's doing, because he's clearly got a mind to do this, and he's got a great head on his shoulders. So I think he'd be a wonderful resource for you guys. So if you're in the North Carolina area, especially, please check him out. As far as the podcast goes, this is the Attorney Post. As always, I am your host, Justin West. If you're listening to this on any of the podcast repositories like Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, any of those out there, please rate us, comment, subscribe, whatever they let you do on the platform. If you're on YouTube, leave a comment down below as well. But the number one thing you can do to help us grow this podcast is simply this. If you know someone who would benefit from the knowledge in this podcast, please share it with them. Because as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any, and the same goes for them. Until next time, this is Justin West thanking you for listening to the Attorney Post, and take care, guys. Bye-bye.